Hi everyone, this is Paul here from the Magdalene Centre. Today I'm doing the astrology report for the week commencing the 10th of July. I'll be outlining the transits and aspects taking place this week and give an overview of what it all means. Before I do that, I just want to clarify, as I always do, that the astrology doesn't control our lives. It gives us a framework to help us understand what is unfolding around us. It helps us to recognise where the options for growth are and the kind of lessons to be learning at this time to maximise our growth are. But for anything to actually take place or for anything to change, it requires that we participate in the process and to engage in actions aligned with the astrology in order to take the opportunities presented to us rather than letting them pass us by, but at the same time making sure that the actions we take are guided by wisdom and not just egoic impulses. Now, in terms of the aspects taking place this week, I'll start off with the moon as usual. So this week we're still in the eclipse window, so it will close on Tuesday when we have the lunar eclipse in Capricorn at 10:38 in the evening. But before that, we'll be having the moon in Libra at the start of the week. So this is a time where maybe focusing on social engagements or focusing on our one-to-one relationships and trying to establish greater diplomacy and tact in our one-to-one interactions. On the same day, the moon will enter Scorpio, and this is a time where you may experience the shadow side coming to the surface, so old emotional issues and old dysfunctional patterns may surface. When this is happening, it's important that we acknowledge it, but at the same time remember to let go of it rather than holding on to it. So it's an opportunity to release the past, if you like. Before on Friday, the moon will enter Sagittarius, so this is a time where I feel that lightness of spirit, that desire to kind of explore new truths or explore new perspectives and to embrace that desire for freedom or that desire for adventure. Before on Monday, the moon will enter Capricorn, and this is a time where there may be much focus on looking at the overall quality of our lives and recognising where things aren't how we'd ideally like them to be, but also taking full responsibility for that and recognising that we are ultimately responsible for how our lives unfold. If we want to live things differently, then we have to take responsibility for making the changes required to push things into the kind of direction we want to be living in. And as I mentioned before, we're having the lunar eclipse in Capricorn on Tuesday at 10:38 in the evening here in the UK, and this will mark the closure of the eclipse window. So during this week, it's very important that we do focus on going with the flow, because during the eclipse window, the old is being cleared out, and it's to do with making space for new beginnings in life. But if we're not focusing on actively letting go of anything which is being revealed to us no longer serves a part in our lives, then we're not making that space for new beginnings. So we can either go with it smoothly and allow these chapters that need to be closed to close naturally and do with ease, or we try and fight against it and end up causing ourselves a lot of stress. So in terms of the other aspects this week, on Wednesday itself, the Sun will be conjunct the North Node in Cancer. So this is an opportunity for us to embody the kind of lessons that we're being asked to work through at this time, i.e. lessons around developing greater empathy towards other people, being more humble in our interactions. It's about learning to reconnect with our feelings and emotions in order to connect with the deeper intuitions that lie beneath them, because if we don't clear out the psychological basement, or we don't get in touch with it, then we miss the intuitions that are trying to guide us in the right direction for our own personal lives. And it's also learning to focus on building the foundation for the goals that are right for who we are, rather than focusing on the South Node stuff in Capricorn, where we may have a habit of doing things to try and gain respect from other people, or trying to take responsibility for things that aren't ours, or trying to control other people, and ultimately doing things motivated from a desire to control or desire to get social acceptance from other people, but in the process doing things which don't bring us satisfaction. So no matter how successful we may being a given endeavour, we don't feel that sense of fulfilment because we know deep down we know that we're pursuing something that doesn't resonate with our soul. On Thursday, the Sun will be trine to Neptune retrograde, so this gives us an opportunity to try and embody the Neptune qualities like the capacity to surrender, to go with the flow. There's also incorporating more of that, or being more in touch with psychic sensitivity and the capacity for unconditional love and compassion through tapping into the universal love or the spiritual love that transcends all human conditioning. It's the kind of love that truly heals, where there's no conditions, there's no attachments to it. It's pure love, irrespective of who the other person is being aimed towards, or who it's being radiated towards. Because the idea of this kind of love is that it's not something that we use to direct to certain people, as it were. It's about embodying it. It's being a living embodiment of compassion and love, and also an embodiment of the capacity to surrender through having faith in higher power. On the same day, Mars will be square to Uranus and trine to Chiron. So this brings the action and desire function to focus. With the square to Uranus, it's about recognizing where we have a strong egoic resistance to change, or resistance to any kind of insights coming in through the high mind that would usurp or that would undermine the authority of the ego, but also being mindful that we don't channel this kind of transformative energy that Uranus brings into just weird and eccentric behaviours that are just a substitute for true transformation, which is the capacity to transform our actions and desires into a devotion towards more humanitarian pursuits, and to allow the actions to be brought under the domain of the high mind. So it's important that discipline is incorporated. It's also focusing on being present and taking that step back when the ego is flaring up and we experience any kind of anger, because Mars in its negative form is anger as opposed to positive assertiveness and willpower. So if we do find anger or eccentric behaviour starting to raise up, it's important that we take that step back, that we breathe and be present with it, and don't act on the impulses, that we pause for a moment and see things objectively, or see things through presence, so that we don't act in a way that is against our fundamental aims, if you like, or will not help us. And as I said, we also have a trine to Chiron to Mars. So Chiron is retrograde in Aries at the moment, so it's about highlighting the wounds to the I am, and Aries is Mars's natural sign. So this aspect, it brings an opportunity to recognise where we either, as a result of the identifying with the ego, we either struggle to assert ourselves, or we overcompensate and we end up taking rather self-destructive course of action, or we steamroll it over the people. As instead, the challenge is to raise the level of understanding of Mars and utilise Mars's assertiveness and capacity to take action and initiate change in service to the whole and not just to the self, or just to personal needs, if you like. So it's about learning to develop the capacity to take action in a way that not only empowers ourselves but can also empower other people, provided of course the other person's asked for any kind of help in the first place. But it's learning to recognise the need to transform desires and the course of action so they are put into the service of the true self, and will help us to initiate the projects that are right for who we are. But again, it's about taking that step back from any inner clashes or any inner pain that this highlights to us, and recognise that the pain or the difficulties, as it were, all stem from the ego. So it's not who we really are, it's the conditioning that leads to those kinds of issues. And then on Friday, we'll have Pallas will be sextile to Jupiter. So this gives us an opportunity to really focus on expanding the mind and seeking to attain a greater level of wisdom through contemplation, but it's also about Pallas is in Libra, so it's about the reconciling of opposites. It's about recognizing the importance of balancing the yin and yang internally, and it's recognizing the importance of utilizing diplomacy and the wisdom of applying balance in our lives. So we should be trying to balance all the different polarities within us, if you like, and seeking that midpoint that allows us to balance the yin and yang so that we become a fully we can function at our highest level. Because if we're out of balance internally, this then tends to manifest externally as imbalances and a little bit of chaos and a bit disharmony. But if we want to experience true peace, then this aspect is highlighting the need to create inner balance, but it's also about remembering to keep the mind expanded and to challenge any belief systems that we have at the moment that limit our level of perception, and it's seeking a more broad-minded awareness and recognizing how everything is actually interconnected. It's all part of the same collective consciousness and the same collective themes. So if we can understand the bigger picture, then we can put things into context and learn to just take a step back and put things into perspective rather than lamenting anything that's happening right now. It's learning to see the bigger picture and recognize that everything ultimately occurs for a reason, and usually in one way or another it will aid our growth or help us to recognize where the current way that we do things isn't conducive for true growth, as it were. Then on Sunday, the Sun will be opposed to Pluto retrograde. So this marks the midpoint of Pluto retrograde. Now, with the Sun and Pluto opposite one another, one of the main things we need to be very mindful of with this kind of aspect is the tendency to engage in any kind of projection and with Pluto all about trying to make us aware of where our shadow is pulling the strings, if you like, or driving our actions, or whether we're operating from subconscious shadow desires rather than ones that will allow us to empower ourselves. But with this kind of opposition, we need to be very mindful that we're not projecting our shadow onto other people and the ego then trying to portray that person as an adversary and someone who's got it against us. What's actually going on is it's our own shadow that we're fighting, but we're ending up projecting it onto other people, so we're not we're failing to grow as a result. But if we can use this as an opportunity to take that step back, to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves, we say here at the Magdalene Centre, and to be very mindful of when we do encounter these kinds of thoughts about other people being against us or anything like that, it's taking that step back and asking ourselves, okay, where are these kinds of thoughts coming from, and what kind of element of our shadow within us is the real issue that we need to come to grips with. It's only when we do the internal work that the external dynamics can transform. So what's really going on if we are experiencing a lot of power plays is often that we're projecting our own shadow outside of ourselves so we can pretend it doesn't exist. But for us to truly empower ourselves and to own our own truth, if you like, or be the authority within our own lives, we have to stop projecting our shadow onto other people. We have to be honest with ourselves about where our own shadow is still pulling the strings, if you like, and seek to transform that, not by judging that part of ourselves, but learn to accept it, embrace it, and through that acceptance and embracing it, it's then that we can transform it, because we're no longer resisting it. This letting go of that resistance allows the transformation to take place. And on Monday we've got a square between Pallas and Saturn. This highlights the kind of conflict between the need for discipline and also desire to focus on our own creative projects, but recognising that if we want to truly achieve or manifest our creative projects, it does require a degree of discipline, and it requires laying that foundation of discipline and patience in order to see creative projects through to their completion. So it's incorporating that discipline needed in order to focus on our goals and to really dedicate or devote time to the creative projects that Palestina is highlighting. And it's also, with Palestina highlighting the importance of balance, as it were, square with from Saturn is about having that discipline to see the resolution of the different polarities through to their completion, so that we achieve true balance internally. And it's understanding that with Palestina going through the relationship house as well, so seeking equality in relationships and balance within relationships and the equal sharing of power, it requires discipline to maintain that true harmony and focus on maintaining equality and justice and peace in relationships. It doesn't just magically happen, it requires our conscious participation. And then, lastly, as I mentioned before, we have the lunar eclipse in Capricorn on Tuesday. This closes the eclipse window, but the energy will still be very powerful at this time. But this particular eclipse highlights the importance of making sure that everything that we do is honest and truthful. And it's, if we have the attitude that, or the mindset that everything that we do could potentially become visible to others or could potentially be found out, then we're less likely to engage in any kind of underhanded tactics or any get rich quick kind of schemes, or anything where we're trying to maintain control and power over the people. If we have this mindset that everything that we're doing is ultimately seen in one way or another, and karma is created through taking shortcuts or engaging in schemes which are designed to allow us to grow, but at the expense of other people, it's understanding that that creates karma for ourselves. If we truly want to be empowered, if we truly want to become an authority within our own lives, then we have to take full responsibility for our lives. This isn't just about the goals we set, but it's taking full responsibility for our thoughts, our words, and our deeds. If we want to build a solid reputation and gain that sense of respect in the community that is often a hidden drive of Capricorn, then the only way we can do that is to be true to who we are. So it's about focusing on making sure that we're always honest in the course of action that we take, that we tell the truth with other people, and we don't entertain any desires to try and control other people or get ahead at the expense of other people. So it's moving beyond control dynamics and instead recognizing that through taking full responsibility for our own lives and holding ourselves accountable, and potentially even making sure that the communities we're part of hold us accountable for what we do or do not do, and what we say or do not say. It's when we honour our promises, when we say something and we our actions align with it. So it's all about living with integrity. It's only through living with integrity, so that our thoughts, our words, and our deeds are all perfectly aligned with one another. So there's no holes, there's no kind of weak links, if you like. It's about removing the shadow tendencies that would prevent us from living in integrity, and it's seeking to live more honestly and to focus on acknowledging the importance of the people who've helped us to get to where we are. So when we are pursuing goals, that we don't just try and claim all the credit, we also acknowledge the people who got us along the way, and we resist the temptation to try and control situations through hiding key bits of information or that would prevent someone from making the next step. It's, instead of being insecure about other people's growth, it's about living with authenticities, living and embodying our own truths, and embracing discipline and self-control. And it's using the resources or the gifts that we develop through living with integrity to uplift other people and to help other people grow as well. So it's recognizing that at the end of the day, we're all part of one family, and if we're engaging in courses of action that are done at the expense of other people, then we're not operating from the higher truth of life, which is that everything is part of the same consciousness. We're all part of the same human family, no matter how different we are. The core nature of us all is essentially the same. And if we're doing things which has a negative impact on other members of our human family, then we're not living from that truth of oneness, and we're not living in that natural order that Capricorn emphasises. We'll do another video on this in more detail, because obviously there's a lot more that can be said about the lunar eclipse. But I hope that's a useful guide for the coming week. There's a lot to take on board. There's many different aspects, but with this being still being in the eclipse window up until late on Tuesday, it's important that we do focus on going with the flow, and especially with Mercury retrograde happening at the same, or being in place at the same time, it's very important we do slow down as much as possible and seek to be present with events as they're unfolding, and go with the flow rather than trying to fight against things and make things happen the way we think they should happen. It's about making sure that whatever we do, we maintain our own integrity. So if we say we're going to do something, that we do it. We be very mindful of our thoughts and words, so we observe them at all times and avoid any kind of loose lips, if you like, so we don't say something just as a throwaway remark without thinking about the potential consequences. So become very mindful of not just our actions but our words as well. So it's all about right speech and right action. And with the aspect between the Sun and Pluto as well, this is also a week where we need to be very mindful of any tendencies we have to project our own shadow, and as a result prevents us from living in integrity, because we can only live in integrity if we own every part of our being. And a key part of the spiritual journey is about illuminating the shadow. It's recognising when the shadow is at play as opposed to our actions being guided by the soul, and seeking to transform that first through acceptance and then through spiritual alchemy to transform the shadow potential and unlock the gift hidden behind it. Because only when we transform that kind of energy, that then becomes fuel to power our own growth in consciousness. So I hope this is a useful guide for the week. May it bring you many blessings and new insights, and with the closure of the eclipse window, may this also bring you a greater clarity of what part of life needs to have been let go of, and what the new beginnings are that the consciousness is pushing us towards. So may this week bring you many blessings. Take care.